This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Todd. I'll call the meeting of the MRVT meeting for July 14th, 2020. And I look for the approval of the agenda, please.
Brad will move the agenda.
Steve Graham, second.
All right, thank you. In a second, any more discussion of that? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Let's go to approval of the minutes and disbursements for May 12th, 2020 of our regular meeting. We can do it together, Todd, or should we do it separately?
I'd like it if you do it separately, Mr. Chair. It's just a little bit cleaner for us.
Okay, I'll look for approval for the regular meeting minutes for May 12th.
Sullivan, so moved.
Steve Graham, second.
Okay, and a second, any more discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pass. Okay. Disbursements list of May 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2020. Look for approval of that.
Sullivan, so moved.
DeVos will second.
All right, there's a second. Any discussion? If not, I look for all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, so moved. All right. Where'd you guys go? Todd, there's no picture yet.
I'm not sure what happened to you. I think everybody else can see. Anybody else not able to see? Everybody's giving me a thumbs up, Mark.
Oh, well, I won't see your lovely faces. I don't know what happened there.
All I can say is Steve Graham's has never looked better.
Hey, I'll remember that one, Brad.
Thanks, Brad, for helping me out. Steve's already mad at me, so I'm glad he can divert his attention to someone else. So I appreciate it.
I don't know what's going on there, but I don't see anybody. But anyways, we'll just go on then. Let's talk about the visitors. We have someone there to audit, the auditor, I believe. Todd?
Mr. Chair, we don't have any other visitors that I'm aware of, and so I don't think that there's anyone here for visitor comments. There he is.
Hey,
oh.
There he is. I see you guys now.
All right. So, Mark,
am I there?
No visitors' comments at this time.
Okay. Let's go to no old business, correct?
Correct.
Okay, new business, the 2019 audit presentation and formal acceptance of it.
Mr. Mayor or Mr. Chair, you have Jim Eichten here. Jim is a principal at MMKR. And Sally, I don't know if you want to introduce him a little bit or talk about the audit just for a little bit while I make him a presenter.
Jim's been with the City of St. Peter audit for years. And so we engaged him to do the MRVT audit at the same time he and his staff were doing the city audit for the City of St. Peter. So it was our first year through on this. They had done it before the merger. So it's been a couple years since they were looking at the books for MRVT or for transit. But as I said, most of the audit was done remotely. They were in the office for some preliminary work in January. And then everything else, COVID hit, and everything else was done remotely. So via emails and telephone calls and scanning, we got through both the city and MRVT audit and came out very well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thanks, Sally. Again, my name is Jim Eichten. I'm a managing partner with MMKR CPAs. I'm the auditor for the city of St. Peter, as well as the MRVT. This is the audit for me for the first time. I've been, for those for reference, I've been auditing local governments for over 30 years. My office is located in St. Louis Park, but for those that might know, I'm actually originally from Mankato, a local guy down there. grew up in that area. So my goal today really is to present the highlights of the audit for the Minnesota River Valley Transit. The goal really is to get acceptance or to document acceptance by the governing body, which is the end of the audit process. So I'm going to share my screen and go through the financial statements. I think that's what we got. Let's hope. There we go. So the financial statements of the Minnesota River Valley Transit are provided. It's a 36-page document, as you can see here. The role of the auditor of a financial statement is to provide an opinion on the financial statements of the Minnesota River Valley Transit Authority. And so the audit is governed by the Office of the State Auditor here in the state of Minnesota, and they require the transit to prepare an annual financial statement, and an annual audit of those particular financial statements is completed by a certified public accountant. That is my role with the organization. So in terms of the audit results, we did issue an opinion, as you see on the screen here. That opinion was a clean opinion. It wasn't the opinion you were looking for going into this particular audit. One highlight that you'll note, the financial statements are prepared with omitting what's called the management discussion and analysis. That really is a section in a local government audit financial statement that is optional. Most organizations of your size, of this size, omit it. So we included our opinion, a discussion of that particular omission. In this particular financial statements, you'll find on page, or at least this PDF, page 16, page 6, the balance sheet of the organization. You can see there at the end of the year, the organization ended the year with about $100,000 in cash. Remember that the cash isn't cash in bank of the transit authority. The cash is really a portion of the city's cash allocated to the transit, Minnesota River Valley Transit. It's really a fund of the city, if you will, that is reported in a separate organization. You can see there, really then, when you look at the overall fund balance of the organization, it's about $91,000 at the end of the year. Considering the size of the organization, really my opinion on that is that certainly you have adequate resources to operate an organization of this size. Page 18, or at least in this case, page 8 of the document does show the financial activities or financial results, both revenues and expenditures. The organization operates significantly on intergovernmental revenues for a variety of fundings, both state and federal funding, but also charges for services. Most of the costs are in personnel, as you can see, almost $644,000 in personnel costs, as well as vehicle operations and some capital outlay for vehicle replacement. A couple other highlights that I wanted to touch on. Also, we, as guided by the Office of the State Auditor, an organization of this type is also required to have us audit your internal controls. In conjunction with our testing of the City of St. Peter's audit, we added elements of internal control observations of the River Valley Transit. Those pretty much the opinion that we provide on that particular operation does provide a reportable item. You'll see here actually as well on page, let me just flip to that page. See what we call a significant deficiency in internal control. And how I would describe that to the board is that this organization is operating under the understanding that you don't have separation of duties within every transaction that is happening in the organization. What that means to you is that there are required then to be compensating controls, other controls that are overcoming the limitations in personnel on the part of the organization. We audit for that. We look for that within the transit organization and verify that those compensating controls are in place. Given that this is the first time we audited this, we probably did have, recommendations in terms of internal controls, as we would always in this situation, in terms of how you might improve the controls, added oversight over the transit operations. Anything that we noted would have been communicated directly to the St. Peter's staff. So lastly, our financial statement opinions. We do issue an opinion on the organization's compliance with the Minnesota Legal Compliance Manual. The Office of the State Auditor does issue a manual for auditors to audit compliance with Minnesota statutes. This is different than what you might see at a city audit. It's actually an opinion on the Minnesota Legal Compliance audit for other political subdivisions. So the list of items we test are very specific to guidelines that are and statutes that are issued by the state of Minnesota, particular to other political subdivisions like this, joint powers entities specifically. And we test the items on the list, not every item overall. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can figure out what button to push. Todd, maybe you want to help me with that? Let's see here.
So you want to stop presentation?
There we go. Yeah, I'm good.
There we go.
So overall, as Sally mentioned, the audit results are very good. We did not have any challenges. This is the first time we went through this particular audit as anticipated. At least on my end, I have audited the city and the transit piece of the city for a number of years prior to it becoming a joint powers entity. And that particular expectation in terms of audit results did come through in this year's results. So we didn't have any findings to report other than the item on internal controls. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions. And once the questions are completed, we'll look for an acceptance of the audit report.
Okay.
So any questions for me?
Anybody have any questions? I guess not, huh?
Excellent.
Mr.
All
Chair,
right.
if I could ask one.
Sure.
So Jim, as you look at this and we talk about segregation of duties, and since this is brand new for this board with your firm, is this something, and you talked about a little bit, but is this something that you would consider unusual for an organization of this size, or is this pretty run-of-the-mill stuff?
Yeah, that's pretty standard for an organization of this nature to have separation of duties, limitations, and as I suggested, we go into this audit knowing that. I mean, that is step one really of our audit steps in terms of planning. Every audit that I do has a risk assessment, right? So my first step is, well, let's understand the risk. Well, one of the risks I have is that this isn't perfectly segregated. So we plan our audit around that and look for what as I mentioned, the compensating controls as part of this audit. If you did have separation of duties, my audit would look different. It would look for, we would proceed in a different manner. So it's pretty standard of an organization this size to have inadequate segregation of duties, as mentioned. I guess the discussion time could also get to what is the corrective action? What action should we be taking as a result of this reportable item? And I say there's none in this regard. The action really from the board's perspective, however, or the governing body, is to be aware of it. Be aware that this is not segregated perfectly. And as you go through your day and go through your observations at the board level, be aware of it and ask the right questions. Ask questions that might highlight concerns that you might see. So
let me ask one other question, if I may, Mr. Chair. So can you comment on page 10 of your report or 25 of the packet? We are nothing if we are not planners as we move forward relating to the budget. So adherence to budget looks really pretty good on this size budget. Would you have any commentary on adherence to budget in an overall sense?
Give me that page again, Todd.
I think it's 10 of your, and it's 10 of your report, statement of revenue expenditures and changes in fund balances, budget and actual. So
Right.
25 of our packet.
Yeah, we didn't, without looking at it, I think it is page 10, you see the budget actual there. The budget actual in terms of when we were doing the analysis, we didn't see anything unusual. I look at that particular page and suggest, I'm not sure if the grants, intergovernmental grants are not being incorporated into the budget, and ultimately probably should be, which would make the revenue side of the equation, much closer. That particular piece you can estimate probably a little bit better. In terms of charges for services, that was pretty close. And then on the expense side, the vehicle stood out, and that probably stands out to me just because it was probably unbudgeted. You didn't budget for those vehicle purchases and they occurred, and that's causing a difference. And probably some of the grants, you got a grant for that as well, which is also the offset.
Yeah. Mr. Chair and members, the reason that I'm glad Jim did that in an unrehearsed way is that, as you recall, you did provide opportunity for us to purchase an unplanned bus because we were eligible to receive that grant from the state of Minnesota. So that's kind of the biggest swing in there. So my goal is always to say, yeah, we're kind of adhering to the plan pretty closely. And where we deviate from the plan, we can explain or rationalize why the deviation has occurred. And in this instance, that bus purchase is really kind of the biggest item that's out there, which was provided for grant dollars from the state of Minnesota, and you guys had approval of that before we applied and purchased.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Any other questions for Jim? Okay, well, if not, I'll look for approval of the 2019 audit presentation and a formal acceptance of that.
DeVos will move.
Sullivan second.
Thank you both. Any more discussion? If not, I'll look for approval by saying aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Chair, if I could, this actually has to be a roll call vote. This actually has to be a roll call. So if I call the roll, if that works for everyone?
That works fine.
All right.
Todd,
So,
Sally? Todd, can you hear me?
yeah, I'm sorry, Sally, go ahead.
On the resolution on page 38, should you be changing the signature from the mayor to Mark?
Oh, great catch. Thank you. That's correct. It should be Mark's name should be on that. So we can get that changed in the final. So any motion
Thank you,
to
Sally.
include that. So Mr. Chair, I'll call the roll with that modification.
Certainly.
Chairperson Huntington,
Aye.
Member Grams,
Aye.
Member Sullivan,
Aye.
Member DeVos.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
And now we'll go to the transit operating grant amendment authorization.
Mr. Chair and members, as you read on page 39 within your packet and a resolution on page 41, we're really looking for two things as a part of this, and both of those are articulated in the resolution. First of all, that you resolve to enter into an agreement, an amendment with the state of Minnesota. This relates to the modification that they would like you to undertake. This applies to strictly the CARE grant dollars that are providing funding for your fares while you are in a no fare status. Secondly, it provides that the compliance manager, which is Wayne, and the City of St. Peter Finance Director, Sally, are authorized to execute those agreements. DOT wants to make sure that we have a specific authorization for those folks to sign it, as our original budget document only approved the budget, did not approve for them to sign off on it. So that's why there's two items here. Again, approval of the modification and allowing the compliance manager and the finance director to not only sign this amendment, but any future amendments that come forward related to this budget. I don't know that there will be future amendments, but I think we're kind of hedging our bets related to COVID funding and CARES funding in this instance. Again, that resolution's on page 41.
Okay. So we want to get approval of that resolution.
Todd, is it, this is Steve Grant, is the funding pretty solid, at least for the rates through August?
Yes, sir. And so what you see on the next agenda item is that fee waiver. And at least there's an email, some documentation provided within your packet that indicates we believe that it is solid through the end of February of 2021.
Oh.
And so that's on page 44. So these are interrelated, Steve, for sure.
I guess I'll have to start using the bus more of that.
Please do. Sandy and her team, Wayne and their team are happy to help you.
Okay. So what would you like, Todd? You want approval of the operating grant amendment authorization?
Yes, sir, on page 41.
Okay. So we'll look for approval of that amendment.
Oh, this is Steve Graham, so moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Sullivan, second.
Okay. Any more discussion? Other than that, all those in favor say aye.
If I can, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. I'll call the roll.
Yep. Call the roll.
Member Grams,
Aye.
Member Sullivan,
Aye.
Member DeVos,
Aye.
Chairperson Huntington.
Aye. Okay, I guess it passed.
Yes.
So the extension of the fare waiver is a part of that too?
No, sir, that actually starts on page 42 and we have a separate resolution for that, Mr. Chair.
That's right. Okay. Is there more discussion about that at all? Anybody want to discuss any more on it? If not, then we'll look for someone to approve it.
Are we talking about the fare waiver now?
Yes, we are. Yes,
So I saw, and I saw your explanation, Todd, about why some of the fares weren't waived. And I don't have an issue with the Gust bus or the hourly rates, but I do think we should look at waiving the preschool rates. A lot of times parents do pay for preschool. So this is an added expense. And, at this time, some of these parents, it might be more of an expense than some can, but they might not have the transportation to get their kid to preschool. I just think it's not gonna be that much but I think it would be helpful for the families out there to waive the preschool rates. I don't have any issues with the other ones, but I mean, if we're waiving the student fares, I think we should waive the preschool as well, because they're just students, just a lot younger.
Right, Brad.
I don't know how other people feel about that.
Mr. Chair, if I could respond to that.
Certainly.
So I think from a staff perspective, we are certainly open to that. As I hope that I articulated in the memo, my only concern and the difference between preschool and student fare is that within Le Sueur and within St. Peter, student fare runs coterminous with your dial-a-ride system. So there's not a separate bus, not a separate driver, etc. It runs coterminous with that, where preschool does not. And so my concern is that, and I'd be okay if it's a nickel or a penny or whatever it is per ride, but something that kind of ties those parents. Part of our fear, I think, is, and certainly my fear is that whether they need it or not, if it's free, I'm going to sign up. And then if I don't happen to use it, or my child only uses it once in a while, then from a MRVT standpoint, not a user standpoint, but an MRVT standpoint, Now we've committed a lot of resources to that, potentially additional bus and driver, and there's nothing kind of to hold them responsible for being responsible relative to how they reserve their ride or their space for that. So I respect what you're saying, but that would be something that I'd want to look out for and would have some concerns about.
Okay. Is there any kind of like scholarship program or anything that we have for situations like this?
We don't currently have a scholarship program for situations like that. We do, though, for the preschool rides. Let's talk about in St. Peter, an example, as we take kids from one of the elementary schools to SBC3 as an example. They do get a discount on that ride because it's reserved for their use and the number of seats are provided for. And so there is some level of discount that is regularly applied to that as part of a contractual basis.
Okay, I wasn't sure how other people felt on it otherwise, so.
No, I think that's a very fair commentary. I'd love to give it free for everyone, but I worry about that in some of those categories a little bit.
This is Steve, Mr. Chair. So right now, then the preschool is 1/2 of the normal fare. Is that what I'm reading?
That's what we would propose as a part of this. Currently, it is. The original fare reduction included that. However, that original fare reduction has occurred over a time when there has not been preschool service for a number of different reasons, including COVID and summer.
So Gus Davis Plus, when they're back in school again this fall, their rides will be free. Is that what?
No, sir. What's proposed within the resolution is that they would be half of their normal contractual amount.
Okay. All right.
But not to confuse the situation, to be clear, we do not know whether that service will come back into fruition at this point, based on requests from Gustavus due to COVID. They may choose not to initiate that service. We do not have a contract with them currently. Frankly, normally by this time in the year, we wouldn't anyway. It's usually a little bit lagging because it's not a super high priority for them. But as they're reviewing their start of school, we just don't know exactly where they're going to be yet.
And I'm not as young as Brad is. I've gone through that immaturity stage already. But anyway, what is the rate right now for preschool? And there isn't any preschool now, is there?
Correct. There is no preschool service occurring today.
Okay.
So
All
Wayne
right.
or Sandy, I'll look for you guys to help on what the cost of that is.
I would, I don't have the sheets in front of me. It's a contract or a subscription that's paid 2 months in advance based on the number of rides per month or per week, however you want to calculate it out. I believe it works out to between $1 and $1.50 a ride, somewhere in that range. So if a student rides 5 days a week, both to preschool and from preschool, they're paying a higher subscription rate than the parents who are paying for a Tuesday, Thursday ride one direction. And just rough calculation, I think it's between $1 and $1.50 a ride.
And our expenses are a little bit greater because you have someone that's there to assess the driver. Is that correct or no?
We have a driver on the bus, and we do not have an aide with the driver. Driver manages the schedule. In La Sueur, the dial-a-ride bus is used for that those preschool rides. They come out of their dial-a-ride service for however long it takes. Here in St. Peter, we actually have a driver that comes in for the 3 routes each day and does the 3 routes, and that's their assignment for the day. So they're in and out 3 times.
Well then, Todd, back to your statement. Was your concern primarily about the preschool in La Sueur or St. Peter and La Sueur both?
Really, it's about both. membergrams so it's really a concern about human nature in that everyone might sign up, but only use it infrequently. And so it's a resource allocation issue. My belief is that sometimes when we give away a valuable service for free, people find no value in it. And so they treat it as such. That's really a call of the board. I'm certainly not against giving it to them for free since we are receiving funding for that, but I want to be a good steward of the resources that were provided too, and really through a contract, or as Wayne articulated, that subscription contract, holding people accountable. Like now, if you sign up for 5 days, as Wayne articulated, and you miss one day, you're still paying for that day because that resource is available and provided for you. If it becomes free, oh, I'll just sign up and maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. So that's my only concern. And maybe that's not an issue. Most parents do a fantastic job. Rules are often for the minority of folks, frankly. So.
Have you, I have one more question, Mr. Chair, and then I'll be quiet. Has that been an issue that some parents have brought forward, that if they take the regular bus, it's free, and if they have preschool, that they have to pay for it?
The preschool is really a point-to-point service, so it's different than the dial-a-ride.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion regarding that? So we decide what we're going to do there?
It's really at the pleasure of the board, Mr. Chair. I'm okay with whatever you do. We will adhere to that. It just was a cautionary tale.
Well, Brad, where are you at? You probably had children at one time that were younger.
Yeah, and they do think I'm old. So, my opinion is, I'd be willing to take the chance of the parents' diet of the parents, canceling, because I don't think it's going to be that widespread of an issue. And I would say if we find it to be a problem, we can, if the school year starts up, preschool year starts up, and we find we're getting a lot of preschoolers who aren't showing up when we're dedicating the resources, then we could essentially dial back and say, okay, we could require a commitment. Right now, it's not a problem, so I don't know if putting in a rule to fend off a potential problem is a good idea. I guess I think it would be better to just offer the service for free at this point. Just look at the preschoolers as being just younger students.
Well,
but that's just my opinion.
The money that is earmarked for the rides through the CARES Act, would that compensate then for the lack of revenue that would be generated through preschool?
So it doesn't exactly work that way, Mr. Chair and members. Melinda, as you see, Melinda's on the screen with us now. Melinda, how are you doing? I won't necessarily hit her up to explain this, but really they're covering our expenses, not our revenues. So just technically looking at that, if we have a cost related to this, they're covering our expenses, not revenues. So to answer
there
your
really
question
isn't necessarily a loss.
Yeah, so you would not have a loss on this. Certainly you would have a reduction in revenue, but that is in essence offset if your costs are being covered by the federal funding that's provided through DOT.
So are you, do we have to account for the expenses, and then Melinda sends us a big check out of her back pocket? If she's got pants on, that is.
We certainly have to account for all of our expenses for sure. And Melinda really doesn't see it exactly at that level of detail. If we have hours, if we have fuel, if we have insurance, she sees that as a part of the overall operation, I believe.
Okay.
Sorry, I was having a little microphone trouble there. My apologies for being late. My last meeting ran way late. But a quick clarification that's probably very pertinent is anytime you have those 5311 grant dollars, it is important that you exercise your policies across the board so that there's no suggestion of discrimination. So I missed the first part of this conversation. If I'm understanding correctly, you're considering the possibility of charging for one type of service and not for another. And I would caution that that puts you in a potential discriminatory category. So if you go fare free, it would be wise to go fare free across the board. Your university contract is a potential exclusion to that process because of different federal guidelines. But for your general public 5311 operating dollars, it's important to be universal. So if I can offer any additional clarification, let me know what questions there might be, and I'll just sit back in a helpful capacity.
So Melinda, hearing what you're saying, this is Member Sullivan, by the way. Hearing what you're saying we should do across the board and offer the free rides in the preschoolers as well.
Yes, if you're doing fair ride for the general public, then this should be free as well.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a
Okay.
suggestion, not a hard order.
I would say, based off of Melinda's comment, I would say then I would like to amend the motion, or amend the resolution to add or to reduce the preschool rate to free, versus a half price. Just essentially, in this case, it is kind of covering ourselves in the to avoid any discrimination complaints. So.
Okay, Brad, is there a second?
This is Steve Grams. I'll second that motion from Mr. DeVos.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, all those, want to do a roll call then, Todd?
I will. First on the list is Member Sullivan,
Aye.
Member DeVos,
Aye.
Chairperson Huntington,
Aye.
Member Grams.
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Thank you, Brad, for bringing that up. I appreciate it. And thank you, Melinda, for clarifying it all too.
Sure. If I could just offer one more clarification, I think I heard a question in there about funding. And just to help you rest easy, your commitment from MnDOT through this amended contract is 100% of your operating costs up to what you originally were granted. So in that original grant agreement, you were supposed to come up with 80% or 20% of that amount, and now we will cover what your revenue would have brought in with this contract. So assuming you don't go crazy spending on, whatever you want for the systems, if you stay within what you originally planned, there shouldn't be any reason why you would go over budget. So.
And Melinda, this is intended to be through the end of February.
It is. Now, there's also an option if your spending is significantly reduced, which we assume it probably will be because of service reductions, that 100% funding could go beyond February. So just know that that's a possibility if your spending is reduced. If not, then it's covered at 100% through February for sure.
Mr. Chair and members, as the title of the resolution indicated, this was through February 28th of 2021.
Will do.
Well, this is Steve Grant. I don't think we need to worry about Todd Pratsky spending crazy. If you look at the cookies he buys the council, you know dang well he's so cheap. So we don't have to worry about that.
It's funny because it's true. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm just wondering, Melinda, would you be advising against starting a service of renting it out or just loaning it out as a party bus to Wisconsin on weekends then? Is that what you're advising?
I would be opposed to that suggestion. That is accurate.
All right. Let's get the reports. Our operational manager report.
So operational manager report, this is Sandy, and we did provide some information that we emailed you separately just the other day. I think it was yesterday, so maybe you haven't had a chance to look at it. but we will have a chance to show it up on the screen here, which I will do in just a moment, hopefully. And so Sandy, if you want to take it away from there, that would be great.
Okay, so I just ran a weekly report from starting in February when we were running regularly until then when we cut back hours due to the COVID. So right now we're running at about between 40 and 45% right now rides compared to what we were in like February, early March. So the rides are starting to go up a little bit, which I think is good. We're getting people to the stores to work, medical appointments, things like that. We still are doing Meals on Wheels also, which we are doing Monday through Friday. We're delivering 20 meals per day, and on Friday we're delivering double because they give out a meal for Saturday. So that's still Monday through Friday in St. Peter. Sueur still has volunteers, so we're not needed here. I don't know, Todd, did you want to talk about the corridor numbers today, or?
Yeah, if you want to highlight the corridor numbers as well, that would be just fine. I think that might be helpful.
Okay.
As you know, folks, we are not running the corridor, are we, Sandy?
No, we haven't. We stopped running in May. So the corridor is not included. Yeah, there it is. So our corridor rides were, as you can see, they're not real high. You know, we did, depending on the month, our rides, there's a lot of times we were running empty, going to Mankato because we didn't know if we were going to have people being picked up in Mankato. You know, they didn't need to call. So we quit doing this as of in May, and I don't know, Todd, what if we're just going to discontinue at this time, or what you want to.
So,
on
Mr.
that.
Chair and members, the thought from your staff has been in this area, and we've had a lot of conversation with True Transit. True Transit can provide this very similar service, but not on a route basis, on a dial-a-ride basis. And so when we get calls currently, we are pushing them to True Transit. Because this was included as a part of your budget cycle for this year, it's not our recommendation necessarily that you have to take action today to do anything. And frankly, technically, we might not even ask you to take action. Some of these corridor route changes have been done at the staff level as well. You don't exactly decide that we start a bus at 7:15 or 7:30 in the morning. Staff tends to manage that portion of it. But we wanted to alert you that, again, it was stopped due to COVID because of concerns about utilization on that, and that we have not restarted, but are now sending people through True Transit. We don't, and Wayne's been our primary contact with True Transit. I don't know that we have any numbers from them about what they're doing, but that is something that we can ask them for. They are probably tracking that, and it is something that we could take a look at for you in the future. It's not our intent to start it in the near term or to restart it in the near term.
Sandy, do you have anything else?
I guess just right now we're just doing our daily dial rides, waiting to hear what's going to happen with school preschool. So if they decide that's going to start up, then we'll gear up getting letters and everything ready to send out to let people know that we will be there to provide transportation.
Okay.
And then we do have one driver that we did hire, Kevin Hartman. He's still in training. He is driving, he'll be driving mainly here in Sueur, but we are going to cross train him to drive in St. Peter also. So he's almost set to go. Has drove a little bit, had a little bit of trouble with the tablet, but we got him in here daily training a little bit. And so I think he'll be ready to go here real soon.
That was great. Thank you, Sandy.
Mr. Chair, one other item that I'd like to point out under operations, and we did talk about this last time, but I want to make sure that we articulate this in the times that we are in. This is probably something that you're interested in. Certainly from an operational perspective, the cleaning of the buses has been stepped up. And so buses are cleaned in between shifts with all the rails wiped down and seats wiped down and all those kind of things with disinfecting agents. And so we've done that since really the COVID emergency started. So I think we're doing that very well. In addition to that, the buses have a sneeze shield both in back and on the side as people walk up into the buses. So again, we wanted to show that. We are not mandating masks for your drivers. It is following the St. Peter policy, which is that certainly drivers can wear masks if they choose to, but they don't have to, with an exception to that, which is if they are utilizing the lift for any reason or strapping someone down, a wheelchair as an example, then we do require them to have a mask on because they're in relatively close contact to riders at that point.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Steve Grams.
Yes,
Sandy,
yeah.
what is the difference? I noticed that your service hours are a lot less than what they were at the beginning of this pandemic issue. Did the hours get reduced as they are currently now relative to where they were back in, let's say, February, before this all became about?
Well, we have one bus that's still starting at 6:30 in the morning. The other bus we just have starting at 10 o'clock instead of at 7 o'clock. So we just reduced a few hours of service because at the time it was slow. But as it gets, if we start getting busier and busier, we'll reconsider, having that bus come in early again. And then we have another bus that just comes in for an hour and a half to do the Meals on Wheels, Monday through Friday.
And you've talked to the drivers. Do you have a sense that certain individuals or certain demographics of individuals that typically ride the bus are not riding it because of their health concerns, or where you see that reduction in the number of people that are taking the bus?
I guess I haven't talked to any about, I'm not for sure why the, people aren't riding. I don't know. Wayne, have you talked to anybody?
I haven't had any conversations with any of the passengers, and I guess I haven't looked specifically about the demographics of the people who are riding to see if there's a shift. In my instinct is that it's pretty much across the board. And I think people have just cut down on their travel because of the COVID issue.
I think the council, I'm speculating that the council will talk at least at our workshop if Todd is going to have an agenda item relative to masks in St. Peter on Monday. But I'm wondering if that would make any difference, if people were more comfortable with that or not. I'm just curious,
Yeah, Mr. Chair and members, I don't know that I can speak to that as it relates to transit. The anecdotal information that I have in talking with a couple of riders has been that they maybe aren't as comfortable as they used to be, number one. Number two, for a long period of time, some of the places that they wanted to go, hair, clinic, etc., were not open to them or were not under consideration for them to go to at that time. And so it probably has less to do with riding than it has to do with how comfortable are they at their destination.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, and everybody else for chiming in there. Wayne, you have a compliance manager report?
Just one kind of add on to the discussion about ridership. Summers are generally our slow time to start with. We have, I'm trying to think, the community resources of Southern Minnesota, we would pick up passengers, group home passengers, take them down to central location where they went out to their jobs. That's been closed down by the state. So there's a number of reasons why some of those rides have disappeared. I mean, we don't have our student rides, we don't have our preschool rides, so some of the decline would be normal. I think Sandy and I talked about 45% of what we would expect is where we're at. So as far as the compliance manager report, we continue to work through the process of implementing the final module of route match, which is the RM, what they call RM pay or route match pay. It's a multi-step process that's being worked through. And since the whole process with route match is interesting in that we are the first instance where they have tried to blend 3 separate transit services into one operating system. Normally it's been one entity in an operating system. So they're, I think they're growing and learning as they go. And sometimes what they're doing to implement the pay for Vine or True Transit and MRVT is having some effects on Brown County because they are not implementing pay at this time. So the process is getting stretched out a little more, I think, than they wanted and what we wanted for sure. They have gotten the database straight and functioning now. We have upgraded the firmware in the tablets so that it is capable now of running the final element, which is an app that will be loaded into the tablet so that the drivers can interact with the pay system. And I think I've explained in the past, the drivers will have the ability to debit or to collect a fare, a cash fare, or debit the fare from the account of the passenger. And I'm not sure if we talked about this at the last meeting, but once they go operational, anytime someone rides, they will automatically have an account set up within route match so that if someone gets on the bus and we're back to charging fare and they don't have correct change, they put in a larger amount than what the actual fare is at that time, the overage automatically gets credited to that account. They can also pay cash, drop a couple of $20 bills in the fare box, and that would automatically go into their account. The individual passenger will need to take steps to allow them to use plastic, credit card, debit card to put money into their account. That would need action on their part. So the cash transactions will work flawlessly. Well, allegedly work flawlessly. We'll see how that actually starts out, but it should be pretty seamless. The nice thing about it is the drivers between now or whenever we get that last element started, they will have several months of no fares to get accustomed to the system and how it works before there's actually any money involved going in and out of the fare boxes. So it should make things relatively easy for the drivers to add that segment to it. So it's coming along. I emailed our project manager with Route Match today. He's trying to put instructions together that somebody my age can figure out how to get all of those apps loaded and into the tablets and ready to start. They do have a little bit of testing they want to do once we get that done before we go live with that last app. So other than that, we're trying to work through some things with how to get some drivers in for training. Our new driver, Kevin, needs to get his passenger assistance training in. With COVID, that will be kind of probably now a 2-step process. We'll go online and get the knowledge, and then at some point in the future, we'll have to get a trainer in to actually have him do the hands-on. Other than that, I don't know if anyone has any questions. The route match is going and it's improving, it's getting better, and the light is at the end of the tunnel, and I don't think it's a freight train.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for Wayne?
Are all the drivers receptive to using it, Wayne, and understanding the
We,
system?
until I have live capability with the app, it's going to be hard to explain how that's going to function. For the most part, I think the background colors will be different. So it will appear different, but there'll be another selection in the fare screen that they're currently using that will say RM Pay. So I think it will be simply a matter of them touching an extra, or not an extra button, but there will be more possibility for that to be paid. I believe it will be a really seamless process once they see what's happening. And it's sometimes if I try to explain without the ability to see what the change is, we can end up with some folks that get a little bit nervous about what's going to happen and how it's going to look. If I can show and tell, I think we'll get a better result. So
Okay.
discussion's been at a minimum. They know it's coming, but it's been vague to this point.
All right, well, thanks, Wayne.
Yep.
Yes, Todd.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just to have Wayne, we've tried to regularly report on this to the board. Wayne, we have not had any ride denials between the previous meeting and this meeting.
That is correct. We've had no ride denials at all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for Wayne? If not, thank you very much, Wayne. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Todd, for your administration report.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make folks aware of that we do have meetings coming up in the future. Right now, it's anticipated that they will continue to be on this virtual platform. As we've talked previously, we are still going to work towards having a goal setting session in September, where one of the primary topics will certainly be the future of fares within the system, and really looking at that under three primary criteria: ease of understanding and use, uniformity between the communities, and local share coverage. So that's some of the things that we're looking at, and the goal of the staff is to bring forward to you some options, at least to give you some starting points to talk about and look towards. And Sally always does a great job with her Excel spreadsheets and being able to manipulate how this can work and not work. So please be ready and watch for that. Sally, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to provide information on relative to financials or anything else relative to MRVT.
No, I haven't really called up anything on financials since the last meeting, but just so everybody's aware, the audit will be put out on both the St. Peter or under the St. Peter website under MRVT, and also I'm going to try and get it over at least Sueur. I'm not sure who. I'll send it over to Zach and see if he can get it posted out there. There'll be a copy at the St. Peter library, and I don't know if there's anywhere else in Sueur I should be putting a hard copy at that people can review. I don't know, Mark. Do you have any ideas on that?
That would be good for our public library as well.
Okay. I'll send it over to you, Sandy. If you could drop that off, that'd be great. Yeah, but otherwise, yeah, the audit went well, as we said earlier, and we're off to another year. I've got some spreadsheets that I started working on. I sent that to Wayne and Sandy and trying to set up a meeting next week on fair discussion. So we'll see where we're at and start working on those.
Okay.
Sally, this is Steve. I didn't get real close to the details, but how much was the audit for MRVT?
Right around $5,000 is what they quoted.
And you recall what the city paid for the city audit?
No, I don't. It's above 20,000 for the city audit.
Man, oh man. Maybe I can get Brad DeVos and Mark and Marvin, we can do the audit. We'll give you half price.
That's right.
I'm thinking this year should be a little bit less because there is not, their week of hotel and food and lodging did not happen. It was all remote. So we're thinking it'll be a little bit cheaper than we've seen in previous years. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else for anybody else? If not, when is the next meeting again, Todd?
I do not have it right in front of me. It would be September. So it'll be September. So we'll make sure.
Okay.
Let me ask a question about that though. Are you getting the packets and material in time? How we're doing it now is working okay for you?
For me, it's fine.
Okay.
I have
All
it
right,
as September 15th at 2:30 as a goal session, so it's gonna be a little bit longer.
Thank you, Sally. And so
Okay.
as you might recall, we were going to have a regular meeting and then the goal session after that.
That's right. Okay. Anything else from anybody else? Otherwise, I'm gonna call for adjournment. Okay,
So
all
move,
those in favor
Sullivan.
for adjournment? All right, give a second.
DeVos will second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Y'all have a great rest of the summer.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I do want to mention that thank you all for serving on this. What you do in helping make this go is even more important now during COVID. The people that use this service within your communities, this is how they get to the doctor. This is how they get to the grocery store. They don't have a lot of other options. And so what MRVT provides is really, really important in these communities. So I just wanted to, again, mention that because I think that gets lost in the business sometimes. It's a very important service in our communities.
Yes, thank you, Todd, for that. And with that note, we're adjourned.
All right. Thank you.